Hello and very welcome here again in Venture Capital TV from La Token. My name is Xavier. I'll be your host for today. And as usual, we bring you innovation, technology, and solutions you want to hear about. And the best part, you get to hear it from those founders, co-founders, CEOs. And the best part is you can post any question or comment you want in the chat box, and we'll be bringing it forward. So this is a really great way to learn more about the project, to get involved. Now, before we move on to the interview, as a reminder, you can always hear previous shows and content by visiting latoken.com/VCTV/shows. Follow us on our socials like Facebook and Twitter. And if you're watching us on YouTube, just hit the subscribe button so you always get informed of great content, opportunities, and even giveaways. One last thing before we move on, anything mentioned here is not any type of financial advice. Please do your research before making any decision. It's your choices and your responsibility. And with that said, I would like to welcome our guest for today. It's Yago, who is a core contributor for the project Sovereign. Yago,
Yeah.
very welcome. How are you?
Thanks for having me. Lovely to be here.
Oh, fantastic! No, great for coming. Now, Sovereign, it's a very interesting product. And just as an intro for our viewers, I'll let you talk more about it, but just a little snapshot of what it is. It's a non-custodial and permissionless smart contract based system for Bitcoin lending, borrowing, and margin trading. So that sounds really interesting. Decentralized, so that's a key part for it. So we're gonna get into all of these details, but before that, can you just please, Yago, introduce yourself and a little bit about your background?
Sure. I have a quite varied background. So I've been in Bitcoin now for about 11 years. And the reason I found out a bit about Bitcoin was because I was working in network science and machine learning. So my background is in neuroscience. I started a number of companies in the biotech space before switching careers entirely. And the reason was before that, I have a background. My family had, were refugees, and I was very politically active, and I was a gold smuggler. And I won't go into too much detail about that today. I mean, I've spoken
That
about
sounds
it on a
interesting.
bunch of a bunch of other podcasts. So if you just Google my name, you can find out about my background. But um, I ended up in Carnegie Mellon University in the United States, where I worked with a number of professors to start a business building a startup doing diagnostics using machine learning tools. And so I was reading papers in machine learning, and I came across this paper about network science called the Satoshi White Paper, or the Bitcoin White Paper. And it blew my mind. By the time I had finished reading the paper, I had spilled my coffee all over my laptop. I had emailed everyone I knew, telling them that this was going to be the most important thing that we would see in our lives. And it totally screwed up all of my life plans, because I basically, within 6 months, had quit everything else I was doing and had gone full-time Bitcoin. And since then, I've been involved in a number of different projects. I started a company building infrastructure, Bitcoin infrastructure for international settlement for banks. We worked with 7 of the 10 largest banks in the world. Um, Later, we started introducing remittance and allowed for using Bitcoin as a rails to remittance around the world. So from Europe, for example, to Thailand or Nigeria or Zimbabwe, and that was an extremely profitable business. Again, I've told that story in other opportunities. But what I hated about it was I constantly had to, work with bankers. And so um, over the last few years, I've joined a team called Sovereign, the team I'm contributing to now, uh, to pursue what I always had as my of Bitcoin and extending it so that we can decentralize not just Bitcoin, but also all of the services around Bitcoin, and build a totally open, decentralized, incorruptible economy, and eventually an entirely new world around Bitcoin. And so Sovereign's been around for a little over a year and a half now. A huge community has grown around it, and the amount of stuff that has been built by this community to extend the capabilities of Bitcoin is extremely exciting, and the most exciting thing I've done since the early days of Bitcoin itself.
Um, One question, and this is just a personal question. From a banker, I was doing banking for 20 years before I moved into blockchain. Uh, how do you manage such a big project like this being decentralized? Like, from a traditional point of view, you need a head, somebody, you could call it a project manager, whatever, somebody who can listen to the people but also take relevant decisions. When it's such a big project like this and is decentralized, how does that work?
So it's a difficult question, because a lot of people think that decentralization means no leaders. And I don't think that's true. I think decentralization means different things in different contexts. And really, I don't think that decentralization itself is the goal. Decentralization is a tool to allow us to build incorruptible systems where every individual is self-sovereign, and they don't require, an authority to tell them what they can and cannot do, and to protect them, and to regulate them. So the Sovereign Protocol has a lot of very, very talented people, and they take leadership positions. And this leadership is earned on the basis of merit. People listen to them, right? Listen to their leadership on the basis of the respect and persuasiveness that they are able to project. So it's true that we don't have an official hierarchy, but in every single human society, right, even as small as a family, and certainly anything larger, different people have different leadership positions, and the context of that leadership could change from time to time. Some people are the leaders because for a specific product, because they understand that product technically better than anyone else, or because they built it. Other people take leadership on things like user adoption or user education, because that's what they can do best, and what they've taken ownership of. So very much like real life, it's possible to have people have, sometimes you're the leader and sometimes somebody else is the leader, without having a rigid hierarchy, and having a system where people take ownership, and people will give them that ownership out of respect. And I think um, this is very effective. It's it's far more effective than having a simple hierarchy if you can get it to work. But the only way you can get it to work is if you are working towards a shared goal and a shared belief. And I think what's special about the community is that the people who are working on Sovereign are working towards a shared goal and a shared belief that we can create a better world by providing the tools that people need in order to be self-sovereign, in order to be, in control of their own lives, their own destiny, and not have to rely on centralized authorities. I also think that there's, in the very essence of being self-sovereign, it's not just, freedom doesn't come without responsibility, and and so ownership is part responsibility and part authority, but it's authority and responsibility that are earned and are taken through merit rather than through
Mhm.
some kind of arbitrary hierarchy.
Thank you for that explanation. There's a video that I found on your webpage that kind of clearly represents that. We'll be showing it later on, but that's sort of found that pretty cool. Now, can you please tell us what is sovereign and what problem are you trying to solve?
Sure. So some of the slides that I sent you could be relevant to this, but
Let's have a look at it.
sure. So Sovereign's goal is to build a world on Bitcoin. And that doesn't just mean building on the technology of Bitcoin, and it even doesn't mean just building on the currency of Bitcoin. It means building on the very principles of Bitcoin itself. which is permissionless, open access to anyone, global accessibility, um, the fact that no one can stop your access, no one can censor you, right? This is what people mean when they say uncensorable. An incorruptible system of rules without rulers. That's the world we want to build. And that means extending the capabilities of Bitcoin beyond where they currently are. Now, I think, we've been, Bitcoin's been around for 13 years. That's old enough if you're, a kid to have a bar mitzvah. We're starting to know a little bit about what it is. And more than that, Bitcoin has had a large number of competitors, copycats, and other systems based or inspired by Bitcoin that have arisen. One of the interesting things that has happened is that even though so many projects have been launched, what they've done is they've only emphasized the uniqueness of Bitcoin, right? Nothing is like Bitcoin. Nothing is as unchangeable. Nothing is as decentralized. Nothing is as perfect money as Bitcoin. And throughout that entire period, Bitcoin has continued to be the center of gravity. And effectively the force, if Bitcoin goes up, the rest of the industry goes up. If Bitcoin goes down, the rest of the industry goes down. It is the driving force and the driving energy behind the entire expanse of everything that has been built, that has been inspired by Bitcoin. And it remains the largest, most important, most liquid, most adopted by retail institutions and governments asset out there. And so there's a huge opportunity, which for technological reasons, up until now, nobody has been properly tackling, which is building the capabilities to do all of the things that we might want to do, right? All of the decentralized trading, decentralized lending, NFTs, and all of the other things that we can imagine on Bitcoin. And so Sovereign, what it is doing is it's providing those tools and building out those tools, and has already become the most used sort of set of products or protocol in the Bitcoin DeFi space.
Okay, thank
So,
you. Yeah,
so maybe if we move over to the next slide.
yeah.
Um, okay, there we go. So, I think the powerful thing about Bitcoin as the center of this world of assets is that it provides this massive pool of liquidity and user base. But it right now is sort of like metaphorically in the center, right? What we're doing with Sovereign is we're building a layer of technology which extends Bitcoin's capabilities and allows you not only to build highly scalable systems for identity or gaming or DeFi or NFTs and payments on Bitcoin, but also bridge other systems like Ethereum, like Binance Smart Chain, Avalanche, and allow you to move funds between those different chains. So we're taking Bitcoin from being sort of culturally at the center of this of the crypto universe to being technically at the center of the crypto universe as well, and it can act more than just building out all these products. With the system, the protocol that Sovereign has developed, it can also act as the bridge between these different protocols as well. And so what we expect to happen over the coming years is that Bitcoin will continue to act as the center of gravity, but now on a technical basis will also start to develop and has already been developing these other types of products, and will also act as the central hub and bridging hub between the various different chains that continue to exist. In other words, those which prove to be successful.
Question: Are you the first ones to do this?
So yes and no. There have been other attempts, and there are other projects in the space. One is Lightning Network, which I'm sure people have heard of. Lightning Network is great for transactional purposes, and so actually, maybe this next slide will help. So if you look at the sovereign stack, right, we've got the Bitcoin base layer,
Mm-hmm.
and then on top of that, we have what is the sovereign infrastructure layer. Now, the sovereign infrastructure layer ties together a bunch of different Bitcoin layer 2 technologies. So, for example, Lightning Network, the Rootstock sidechain, work to provide better pegging technology with Taproot. There's currently work being done to integrate the Taro protocol. And so that infrastructure ties these things together and provides the kind of performance that previously was not available with Bitcoin. Now, there are other attempts. So Lightning Network is one. Liquid is another kind of side chain which provides a degree, like provides smart contracts. And then there's also Stacks, which provides smart contracts and are tied to the Bitcoin ecosystem. I think what makes Sovereign unique is that Sovereign, first of all, ties together a large number of different types of infrastructure. It is directly secured by Bitcoin proof of work. In other words, Bitcoin miners directly secure sovereign transactions, and that it is bridged to the other chains in a way that none of the other systems are. And so Sovereign, because it's a decentralized system and because it's a relatively young system, has been around for less time and hasn't raised, the kinds of hundreds of millions of dollars that some of these other projects have raised. And yet, already Sovereign has performed more trading activity than all of the rest of them combined, and is growing remarkably fast. So I think this approach of tying together not just the various technologies that are available in Bitcoin, but also tying together the rest of the crypto space is proving to be very, very powerful in terms of what it's able to provide users, and is answering a real need out there.
Yeah, and I think that's the clue what he just said, that is answering or addressing a real issue that's out there. I think that is so important because we see a lot of projects that are just making a token without any real reason, and then it's a hype program. So then, yeah, that a little bit damaged the whole industry. Thank you for that. Can you tell us now a little bit about the team? Who's the team? Futures products you offer in the ecosystem? You did touch a little bit about it, but maybe we can go a little deeper now.
Sure. Yeah, so there's a core team of about 50 contributors who are working on Sovereign. In addition to that, there are a number of ecosystem projects and a large number of volunteers who are working. Overall, right now, there's about 100 people working on the Sovereign ecosystem,
Wow.
um, building either products that are directly part of the Sovereign protocol, things like trading, margin trading, perpetual swaps, Bitcoin-backed stablecoins, or are building things which are part of the ecosystem and connect with Sovereign, but are not directly part of the Sovereign core team or the Sovereign core protocol. Things like stablecoin aggregators, bridges, NFT launch pads, and things like that.
And these people, these approximately 100 people, are they located all over the world, or are they concentrated geographically in one region?
Yeah, no, I think there's someone on every single continent who's working on
Wow.
Sovereign. Many of the people who are pseudonymous, some of them, like me, have docked themselves, right? So I'm publicly known, and so are some of the other people. But some people are pseudonymous, and that's part of the beauty of Sovereign. It's open access. Anyone from anywhere in the world can participate, and the system remains secure because it's open source, because everyone can review the code. We don't have to have a trusted inner party, who are controlling things. We actually build our security by exposing ourselves to the world and allowing anyone to participate.
If somebody would like to participate, how does it work? Is there an application? How do they get in contact with the project to show the
Yeah,
interest?
so you can send a message. If you go to the wiki, you can find a page where there's like a list of different roles that the core team is looking to hire for.
Hmm.
Or you can just jump into the GitHub, look at the open source code, start pushing Git requests, pull requests. Um, or you can just jump in to the community in the Discord, in the Telegram, on Reddit or Twitter. So it really depends on how you want to be involved. Do you want to be involved on the community side? Do you want to be involved in the development side? Do you want to, create memes, or do you want to write articles? Um, Over time, more and more people are jumping in, and they find their way through one of those directions. You can also just email me or message me on Twitter.
There you go. As you can see to our viewers, below is Yago's Twitter, personal Twitter at Iran Yango. You see below. And if you want to know more about the projects, please do visit the website sovereign.app. As you see below in the banner, you have a lot of different videos, educational videos. You get in contact with the community, and you have a blog, and you have all the necessary info that you will need if you want to participate in this project. So I'll leave this information here for a little bit, so you can just write it down and get in contact. Now, it's been crazy times for all the crypto industry, right? Because you had some stable coins have been affected. Now the governments are, especially in Europe, are have decided that they have to jump in and start regulating it. Still, we might be going through a crypto winter, so it's all in all, it's been a crazy time to be in this industry. Can you give us your view on the current market situation and where
Sure.
you think it's heading to?
Sure. I actually don't think this is such a crazy time. I think this is pretty much exactly what is expected. What we see every few years is that there is this bull market, there's over exuberance. There are a whole bunch of very, very poor projects that don't have a long term vision, and people lose a lot of money, and there's some kind of regulatory backlash. I think that we can expect that to continue happening. And I think that's why sovereign is so important. It's so important that we have a project which is built on the fundamental um, principles of Bitcoin, right? Of building securely, of not introducing, Ponzi-nomics, not trying to introduce risk which is hidden from users, and which is decentralized enough so that it will continue to operate in exactly the same way that it is intended to, regardless of what happens in the regulatory space. In other words, that it is unregulatable, because unregulatable means open access and global access to all people. So um, I'm not surprised by what's happened, and I expect it to happen many, many times again. And that's exactly why I think a project like Sovereign is so important.
Okay, thank you. Do you think that once the authorities will start regulating them more and trying to, I want to say control it, but trying for all these different projects to be regulated, do you think Sovereign will actually have to at one point obtain a license to continue working, or you think that will not be needed?
No, for the same reason that Bitcoin doesn't require a license to continue working. Companies that work with Bitcoin or companies that work with
Then
Sovereign
they will need it.
might require one, but Sovereign has no company,
Uh-huh.
and is open and accessible to anyone. Um, so, there's there are fiat on ramps and off ramps that integrate with Sovereign, and there'll probably be more in the future. They might be regulated, but Sovereign itself uh, can't be regulated.
Okay, okay, cool. Thank you for that. Now, what is Sovereign doing to mitigate the risks that the current market is facing, and how are you gonna make ensure that the protocols thrives in the long term?
So, a huge number of things. First of all, the code needs to be solid. And if you look at the way Sovereign's code is written in comparison to pretty much any other project out there, the number of unit tests, the number of audits, um, uh, the bounties around it, the number of people who are involved in reviewing the code, the number of times the code is reviewed, I don't think there's really any other project in DeFi that is the equal of Sovereign when it comes to that. But Sovereign goes far beyond that. Sovereign is effectively its own regulatory regime. and it introduces the kinds of regulation that we need in a world where you can't have regulators. And so what
Hmm.
that means is that the sovereign protocol itself, as it is governed by the sovereign autocracy, has taken steps, for example, not to allow in algo stablecoins or allow them to become substantial providers of risk, not allow centralized stablecoins to become a key vector of risk into the system, not to introduce systems which uh, are not vetted or where they're centralized and users could be rug pulled, right? So the system itself is self-protecting, and effectively, I think this is the future of regulation. It's protocols that regulate themselves by having a set of rules of how different products or systems within them can operate, and also making it difficult for things which don't operate in that way to interact with the ecosystem. And Sovereign has taken many, many different steps as a protocol to design things very, very differently. So, for example, the way Sovereign staking works is you stake for a long period of time, which forces you to be incentivized to think long term about the protocol. But
When
also,
you
the longer you stake for, the more you earn of the protocol revenue. So you get rewarded for thinking long term.
what
And then
what would you consider long term, like time wise?
the average staker is staking for more than 2 years.
More than 2 years. Okay.
More than 2 years. The maximum staking is 3 years. So you can see that a large number of stakers are staking for the maximal amount of period that they can.
Hmm.
And that's because the system incentivizes that. And the system, provides you with additional protocol revenue on the basis not of how long you staked, because that's looking into the past, but on how long you're going to be staking for, how long you're locked in. So it's a very forward-looking incentive alignment mechanism. And then there's also technical things like how bridges work into the sovereign ecosystem. Everything gets aggregated into, there's not like 10 different versions of, Tether, for example, and so on. And there's one because even if there are many bridges, all of those tokens get re-aggregated into one canonical version. And so there's a lot of things that are done for security, but also for usability in the sovereign ecosystem that aren't being done elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. And I want to touch a little bit more about that. But next, I think it will be very important to talk about the token, the SOV token. Before the token, do you think it'll be a good idea to show the video?
Sure. So I think one of the most exciting things that Sovereign is doing right now is launching. We've actually just opened up early access, and we'll soon be opening up public access to a new product, which is called Zero. And Zero is we'll show the video, but Zero is going to be paired with another product, which is the Sovereign Dollar, which is going to be the most decentralized, most robust stablecoin in the world, backed by Bitcoin. So sure, let's show the video.
Okay, just give me 1 minute. Let me pull this up. And here we go.
In a world controlled by the fiat lords, centralized exchanges were inevitably corrupted. Only one force stood for freedom.
One more Bitcoin. Lambo.
We'll help you. Give us your key. Trust us.
Lambo.
Hodo! Remember, not your keys.
Not my coins!
Before it's too late. Sovereign, decentralized Bitcoin trading and decentralized Bitcoin lending. I'm invading! Defeat centralization, take back control.
Centralized wallet, don't be a hypocrite. Find yourself broke, you want to the bottom.
Stay sovereign.
South, unless you change up. Satoshi gave us a code, and now we switch the game up.
Okay, pretty cool.
That's a very cool video, which was made by some community members. But actually, that's not the video I was referring to. This is the video I was referring to.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
not sure.
sorry.
Let me see if I can share share this. Okay.
Do you want me to?
So okay. All right. I don't know if we'll be able to show it. This last screen is supposed to be a video, but it doesn't seem to be playing. So let me tell you what it is. So Bitcoin Zero is a new way to borrow with Bitcoin, and it is simply the best way to borrow with Bitcoin in existence. So, it is a smart contract-based system in which a line of credit. So basically, you lock up your Bitcoin in a smart contract unique to you. The system will issue you stable coins, which you can convert into basically any stable coin. So USDC, USDT, the sovereign dollar. And the interest rate that you pay for this loan is zero forever. You can pay back the loan whenever or never, up to you. The only time you would need to pay back the loan is if you wanted to unlock your Bitcoin again. And there is a risk of liquidation, but it only occurs if your centralization ratio drops below 110%. And if you compare that, for example, on Aave, the 150% that you would require to maintain is much, much lower. And you can also top up at any time or pay back at any time to avoid liquidation. So it is an entirely new, entirely self-sovereign way of borrowing with Bitcoin, completely decentralized, with 0% interest, zero identity requirements, zero middlemen, and zero chance of your funds being, captured and frozen by a Celsius or a Voyager or something like that.
And is this going to happen or is it already existing?
It's already on mainnet. People are already using it. It's currently in early access. You can go to the Sovereign Twitter and sign up to get into the queue. So the system, we're slowly letting people in, and you can get into that queue. There's around 6,000 people in the queue right now. But if you invite friends, you can get bumped up earlier into the queue. And in a few months, we will remove the queue and basically provide access to everyone. But I think this is a huge change, not just for Bitcoin and the crypto industry as a whole, but also, of course, for Sovereign as a protocol.
It's kind of, I understand it, the concept, and it's actually at the same time a little bit hard to not understand it, just to see it working, because it will be like lending, but with zero fees. Okay, there's a collateral.
So the question that people usually ask, and I think is a good question, is, wait, how can you have borrowing with zero interest? Why would anyone lend you the money? And the answer is, it's because you're lending the money to yourself. So when you lock up the Bitcoin, the system generates, like the Fed, right? We're competing directly with the Fed here. We're the ones who go brr, right? You're the one who goes brr for yourself. So your smart contract will issue stable coins for you on the basis of the value of Bitcoin that you've locked up. And so there is actually, and that's why you're not paying interest, because you wouldn't pay interest to yourself.
Yeah. Okay. One question. We all know what the market fluctuation that's happening, right? And it's quite happens quite fast. When you lock your Bitcoin, then you're gonna get a stable coin, whatever that is, and then the coins that you will get will represent the value of Bitcoin at that point in time, right? Regardless of future fluctuation. Okay.
Right. But you that's why you should be over collateralized, right? So if you want, $100, if you want to borrow $100 from yourself, you should put in $200 worth of Bitcoin, because if the price of Bitcoin drops by 50%, then your Bitcoin could get sold to cover the value outstanding, right? That's what a liquidation would be. But if you are over collateralized, then that won't happen. So the thing here is to maintain a good safety margin, right? Not to get greedy,
Hmm.
and you know, you are self-sovereign, so you need to be responsible for that loan. If the price of Bitcoin starts dropping, you may want to look at it.
Okay. And another question. In the beginning, you mentioned that you can pay it back or you can never pay it back.
You definitely can pay it back. You just aren't required to.
You are not
Um,
required to pay it back.
yeah.
So you can
So it's
just.
basically, this is, you know, this is the easiest way to hodl, right? So you hodl for the future for as long as you want, but you can get some of the value of your Bitcoin out today and start spending it in stores or buy a house or buy a car or whatever it is that you need. And as the price of Bitcoin over many, many years goes up, the line of credit that you have, right? So if one Bitcoin today is $10,000 and you take out a $5,000 loan, and then, you know, um, or let's say Bitcoin today is $20,000 and you take out a $10,000 loan, and, you know, 5 years from now, Bitcoin is $200,000, then your loan represents a very small portion of that Bitcoin. And so you can actually withdraw some of that Bitcoin and sell just enough Bitcoin to cover the $10,000 loan, and you never actually are paying back the loan in and of itself. And so you can actually borrow from the future value of your Bitcoin.
Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Okay, that's an interesting concept. Uh, Quite different from the banking side. Yeah, it's
Yes.
kind of disrupting the whole logic behind it. But now, how does the SOV token fit into the whole project and ecosystem then?
Right. So the SOV token its goal is to be the coordination token, right? To
Hmm.
coordinate the incentives of the community, to coordinate around risks, and the management of those risks. And so um, the protocol earns fees, right? Every time a loan is made, there's an origination fee. So you don't pay interest, but you pay an origination fee to the protocol. Could be 0.5%. Every time there's a trade in one of the, you know, in the perpetual swaps or margin trading, every time someone is borrowing or lending some other asset like BTC, they're earning interest, and part of that interest gets collected by the protocol. So the protocol earns fees in a large number of different ways. And those fees are distributed to the people who maintain the governance of the system and keep the system safe. Those are the SOV stakers. In addition to that, there are also projects that have launched as SOV bonded tokens. So, for example, Sovereign Mint, which is launching the Bitcoin, the sovereign dollar, right, the Bitcoin-backed dollar, it wrapped SOV tokens to issue its own token. And in the future, on-chain transaction fees, part of them will also be going to SOV stakers. And so across every aspect of the stack, the SOV holders and stakers play an important role in maintaining the ecosystem and earn back the revenue that the protocol makes.
Okay. One question I hear you mention already twice about the SOV dollar. Is that like going to be like a stable coin?
Yes, it's a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. It will be the most robust and most decentralized stablecoin out there. The
And when are
sovereign
we
dollar.
gonna see
That's
that?
that's another way we're competing with the Fed. Sorry.
Yeah.
So
When is that?
that will be coming out shortly in the next couple of months. So if you look at the roadmap, you can
Yeah.
see, you know, this is Q3. We're launching in its public release Sovereign Zero plus the Sovereign Mint, which launches the Sovereign Dollar, perpetual trading, which we expect is going to be a very, very big product as well. Major redesigns and security aspects are being introduced. So that is basically the coming 3 months.
Okay. Okay. Here I have a question for you.
Sure.
With everything happening in the world, it's really hard to forecast what's gonna be in 1 year from now. But where would you wish, or where would you like to see Sovereign as a project in a couple of years from now?
Well, I see Sovereign as a very long-term project. And it is very much in its infancy, and there's a huge amount of infrastructure that Sovereign is building out now. So, in many ways, I think Sovereign looks less impressive now than it will be in the future, because so much of what is being built is sort of infrastructure which is invisible to the user right now. But over the next 2 years, I expect we will start to transition a large amount of stablecoin use to the most decentralized stablecoins. I think a significant part of the borrowing that is done with Bitcoin will be done with Zero because it's simply the best way. I think the fact that we're now introducing derivatives and perpetual market is going to drive significant trade volume over the coming years. And so those are sort of like the obvious things. But in addition to that, I expect that there to be significant improvements in privacy that is available with Bitcoin. There's going to be significant improvements to the infrastructure that will allow higher degrees of scalability and faster transaction confirmations. And one of the things that people in Sovereign talk about is the building of the sovereign nation, right? Building what we're building now are sort of like the financial aspects, but we are looking to build out a nation of people by providing the tools, the education, the technology that is required to allow everyone anywhere in the world to be free and to create a nation of sovereigns, a nation of free people.
Okay. Any thoughts of purchasing an island, like a couple of groups of people, blockchain people? I've seen that they already, one is in Asia, the other one is in the Caribbean islands. They have
Yes,
created their own.
so I didn't mention this at the beginning, but that is one of the things that I'm known for is I helped change the constitution, or was involved in the changing of the constitution in Honduras and the creation of the first free zones there.
In Honduras, really?
Yeah, the ZA project, and so I expect that Sovereign will be more than just a virtual jurisdiction. It will also be a physical jurisdiction as well, and probably sort of number of physical jurisdictions spread across the world.
I have so many questions in that regard, but I think we're gonna leave it for that as another topic because it's really
Sure.
fascinating. You couldn't even think about this like 10, 15 years ago.
I think the world is changing completely. I think
Dramatically.
everything that we're seeing is telling us, the institutions of nation states are crumbling. But what that means is that the nation state itself is crumbling. And our generation, with the technology of blockchain, with Bitcoin, with the tools that we build out, with our focus on cryptography, and by building out cultures which understand, an alternative culture to sort of like the nation state culture, we're going to completely remake the world. We're going to create a world which is more global, and we're already doing this, right? A world where borders matter less, where the regulation of borders doesn't make sense. And so we're going to have to rebuild the institutions, like financial regulation, like providing areas, free places for people to live, and by working together to create sort of like the cultural mores of the future, we're going to have to recreate the entire world. And I think Sovereign, maybe more than any other project in the world, is focused on that vision.
Okay, very interesting. And talking a little bit about that, and take into account that you have all these 11 years that you've been dealing really with the crypto. What is the future in crypto at DeFi? How do you see that?
Well, coming back to what we were just talking about, this is a bit of a complicated subject, but I'll try and give like my high level view as simply as possible. Ultimately, I think all government and all law focus on property rights. Who owns what? And that includes your body. Like, who owns the right to your body, is the question of violence. But most of law doesn't deal with that specifically. That's just one particular part. Most of the law and most of the government is around taxation and contracts and who's building infrastructure and who's paying for education. But it all comes down to property ownership and economy. And what Bitcoin represents is an entirely new way of thinking about property, one which isn't based on violence, right? Up until now, the only way you could project power over property, right, was you did it through the threat of potential violence. And that's why we have big governments. Big governments are supposed to have a monopoly in a geographic region to decide who owns what and to avoid violence by being the only one who can utilize violence, right? Bitcoin provides us with an entirely new way to think about property. And Bitcoin is the special case. What we're looking to do with Sovereign is to generalize that, right? To basically allow us to tokenize many, maybe all the sort of laws, regulations, contracts. That's why they're called smart contracts that go into defining who owns what, how property can be transacted, because that is how you free individuals to be financially self-sovereign. But it is also because the basis of all law and all regulation ultimately is a question of ownership, property, and those types of rights. It allows us to create a world where those types of rights can be secured by the methods of smart contracts rather than the methods of violent contracts. And so I think the big deal here is that for the first time in thousands and thousands of years of human history, and not just human history, I mean, even animals have territory and property, right? If a lion kills an antelope, it protects that antelope. That kill belongs to the lion, right? But it protects it through violence. So for all of animal history, violence has been the way that we've projected power and decided what the rules of the game anywhere are. And now for the first time, and this happened 13 years ago, we're just 13 years into this, we have a different technique. It's called cryptography. And that is a huge, huge change. It's a change as big as the invention of fire itself. And I think, whether Bitcoin is up today or down tomorrow is so insignificant in comparison to that.
And I think a little bit people mistakenly think that cryptography blockchain is only about the coins, the tokens, and the speculation. They don't realize that it's so much more, and that it can really change all the way we manage data, how it's going to affect that in our everyday lives. So it's not only
right.
about the tokens and the speculation and making money. It's much more than that. So,
we started this conversation. I was telling you how I came across Bitcoin and read the Satoshi white paper and spilled my coffee. And this was the realization. I didn't fully understand it, but I had this intuitive sense that I was reading a piece of paper that was telling me everything. Everything had changed. And I think we're still at the very, very beginning of that.
Definitely. And now with technology advancing and how metaverse is going to play its part, it's just mind-blowing what's coming. Well, Iago, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure talking with somebody like you with all these years experience, knowledge. It's been fantastic. Unfortunately, a little bit short of time, but we would love to have you again on the show whenever you have any new development. We'll be super happy to hear about it. Until then, do you have any final recommendation for our investors today?
Absolutely. One important recommendation: stay sovereign, right? Don't give up your freedom. Find ways to take control. The people who find ways to use these technologies are going to be best protected in the future and going to prosper in the future. I think the world is going to go through and is going through right now a time of change. Time of change is always difficult, can always be dangerous. So my recommendation is do your own research and stay sovereign.
Okay. Thank you very much for those words. I really appreciate it that you shared with us all the knowledge and time. And once again, we'll be super happy to have you here on our next show.
Awesome. Well, I'd be happy to come back. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. And to our viewers, then, thank you for watching us and see you at the next show. Have a great day.